Welcome to the first installment of Star Wars Characters Explained. In this series, I'm going to give you an in-depth understanding of characters that you may or may not know of. I'm going to explain to you their histories, their powers, abilities, skills, and the reasonings behind their actions. In today's installment, I'm going to explain to you arguably one of the most fearsome Sith and Force users in all of Star Wars, Darth NIhilus. Darth NIhilus, however, was never a conventional Sith Lord despite the title. He never held the Sith Order in high regard and only allied himself with them to grow his power and achieve his goals. Unlike most Sith who fought for power and control, the only thing Nihilus wanted was to satiate his ever-growing hunger. But to understand Nihilus truly, one must understand his past, and why the once Jedi became a hungry, planet-destroying scourge. Not much is known about Nihilus' past as a Jedi, but it is known that Nihilus was a member of the Jedi forces that abandoned the Order to fight with Revan in the Mandalorian Wars, and he was present in the final battle at Malachor 5. However, unfortunately for him, he was on the ground fighting when Bayodur activated the mass shadow generator. All the ships in orbit of Malachor 5 were obliterated, Jedi and Mandalorian alike, and those on the surface met a similar fate. Nihilus, however, was one of the few survivors, but his friends and his family had all been killed, and he lost everything. For survival, and to deal with the flurry of emotions overwhelming him, he had started to call upon the dark side. The shadows surrounding the planet were slowly poisoning him, and the emotional distress was causing him a strange emptiness, and this emptiness turned into hunger. Nihilus stumbled upon another survivor on Malachor 5, and inadvertently drained them of their life force. It was at this moment that Nihilus felt some peace. His sickness and his painful memories disappeared for a short time, but once the effect wore off, Nihilus became hungrier for more of this energy, and he proceeded to drain the life force out of all the other survivors he found left on the planet. After each time he fed, Nihilus grew stronger in the Force, and to escape the planet, he tore the practically destroyed capital ship known as the Ravager out of Malachor 5's orbit, boarded it, kept it together using the Force, and flew it off the planet. He was then found by the former Jedi historian turned Sith Lord Darth Traya, who had noticed he was a wound in the Force, and it was because of this that he lusted for the energy of others. Traya trained Nihilus in the ways of the dark side, alongside her other apprentice Darth Sion, and together the three of them formed the Sith Triumvirate. The man who came before was no more, and born was the monster known as Darth NIhilus, the Lord of Hunger. The Sith Triumvirate would go on to almost eradicate the entire Jedi Order, save a few and their ultimate nemesis, the Exile, Mitra Surik. Now that we know Darth Nihilus' background, why does he do what he does? Why does he lust for the Force energy of others? Well, at Malachor 5, Nihilus was subject to an event of mass death and chaos. The Jedi was consumed with the screams of the dead, and this left him broken. This turned him into what is known as a wound in the Force. He learned that consuming the life force of others temporarily silenced his pain and increased his power, but at a cost. Every time he consumed the Force, it would slowly erode his physical form. The very power he was using to survive was actually killing him. To survive this, he tore his very spirit from his body, and he then placed himself within his mask and his robes, so that he could still make his presence known as a physical form. Once he had done this, however, Nihilus's humanity was destroyed, and he became a being of the dark side, and his only intent was to feed upon the force of others. Eventually, once he had consumed the Jedi, he would consume the Sith, and then the rest of the galaxy, until there was nothing but Nihilus. But what actually made Nihilus stand out to become the most feared being in the galaxy at the time? Well, it was his ability to feed on the living force, and it was because of this Darth Nihilus was practically invincible. Everything in the entire galaxy is bound by the force, so everything was a target for Nihilus's hunger. Every living thing, even around Nihilus, would eventually succumb to his drain, even if it wasn't directly targeted. Which is why aboard his ship, the Ravager, there is nothing but zombie-like slaves serving him. Nihilus was also a very proficient force user too. He had the ability to yank entire starships from Malachor V's orbit. He then kept these ships intact as they flew. He also had great power in typical dark side abilities, such as Force Lightning and Dark Rage, and he could go as far as literally stripping an individual of the Force, just like he did to Darth Traya, which is a fate worse than death for some. Nihilus's greatest feat, however, was the destruction of the planet Kotor. The Jedi had formed a secret conclave on the planet to discuss what was attacking them. Most of the remaining Jedi were present at the conclave, but little did they know this conclave was a trap for Nihilus, created by the Jedi Master Atris. Atris managed to tip Nihilus off about this secret meeting, in order to draw him out and destroy him. But in doing this, she had unknowingly doomed everything on the planet. Nihilus arrived aboard the Ravager, and as he stood upon the bridge, looking down at Kotor, he spoke. As he spoke, every living thing on the planet was drained and destroyed by his hunger. Once his work was done, he then walked upon the barren world to find one woman. A woman that had managed to miraculously survive his onslaught. And deep inside, a shred of humanity still remained. He spared the young woman, and he developed a force bond with her, becoming her master. Perhaps this was out of sympathy, as he too survived something similar. Now I bet you're thinking, he's surely the most OP Sith in the entire universe, right? Well, yes and no. Only the Sith Emperor Vitiate had mastered the Force Drain on par with Nihilus. But what happens when he cannot drain the Force? Step in the Jedi Exile. In Nihilus's last battle aboard the Ravager above Telos, he was confronted by fellow wounded in the Force, Meetra Surik. Meetra is in essence the complete opposite. Nihilus gave in, and his hunger for Force energy was slowly consuming him, whereas Meetra, who had survived a similar ordeal, had deafened herself from the Force to keep herself alive. But that's a story for another time. Nihilus's first thought was to drain Meetra, but he soon found out that this was not possible. So it became a duel of fates between the Sith Lord and the Jedi Exile and her party. But it was thanks to Visas Ma and her bond with him that caused his downfall. She had betrayed Nihilus and joined Meetra Surik, and she had cut her link to him, which severely hurt him during this battle. This allowed Meetra to strike the Sith Lord down. Mandalore was severely wounded in the battle, but Visas Ma healed him enough to get him off the ship before it was to be destroyed. Once his ability to drain and feed upon the Force was gone, he was vulnerable. Despite almost single-handedly beating one of the greatest Jedi warriors in the galaxy, and Mandalore and his own apprentice, the slither of humanity that he had left eventually came back to end him. Without Visas, it's likely to say that he would have overwhelmed the exile on Mandalore and then proceeded to consume Telos. Perhaps it was a blessing to him that his last act of humanity would be the very thing that eventually let him die. Nihilus' spirit had managed to survive within his robes, but he was never again strong enough to take full form. His armour was placed within a tomb on Korriban, and despite his spirit still being in touch with the dark side nexus of Korriban and contactable through the Force, the Sith Lord would never arise again. And that was the end of the Lord of Hunger. For me, Nihilus' story is extremely tragic. His quest to help stop a war to save his friends and family unintentionally turned him into one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Knights of the Old Republic 2, for me, is one of the best Star Wars stories ever made, if not the best, and despite its rushed development as a game, I still believe it's the most thought-provoking entry to the Star Wars universe. Hopefully you now have a good understanding of Nihilus as a character. If you have a question about him, or if there's any specific characters you'd like explained in the future, make sure you put something in the comment section below. If you found this video informative, I'd really appreciate it if you could use your Force powers to give this video a like. And most importantly, if you want to see more, be sure to Force choke that subscribe button and support the channel. I'll see you guys soon, and in the meantime, may the Force be with you, always.